My name is Margaret Brooks. I'm 33 years old, and if there's one thing life has taught me, it's that family has an uncanny talent for remembering only the version of you that fits the story they want to tell. That truth hit me the moment I stepped into my cousin Ethan's baby shower last Sunday, standing awkwardly at the entrance, clutching a bow-wrapped $500 stroller like it was a peace treaty no one had asked for. I walked in with something pure in my heart. They looked at me like I'd brought a weapon. Conversations didn't stop, but they warped, stuttered, bent around me like I was an unexpected shadow in the doorway. My cousin Logan sent me that tight-lipped smile, the one every woman in our family masters by age 12, the smile that says, "I'm judging you," but I'd never admit it out loud. Uncle Dennis, seated like a throne-bound judge at the gift table, raised a brow so high it could have sliced the air. Even his half-nod at my greeting felt like a reprimand. No one moved to help me with the stroller. No one said thank you. No one even pretended to care. I cleared my throat. Where should I put this? Logan gestured vaguely at the corner where pastel gift bags and diaper towers were stacked like props. I placed the stroller down, gently feeling stupidly self-conscious for thinking something so practical, so thoughtful might matter. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to not let their reactions crawl under my skin the way they always used to. But there's something about walking into a room where everyone has already decided who you are, and it's never the version you've worked years to become. Ethan wasn't there yet, running late, apparently. So I stood around making stiff small talk with relatives who hadn't bothered to check if I was alive during the worst years of my life. So, still in UX design, you drove, didn't want to splurge on a flight. You're looking better, as if my entire existence before today had been a cautionary tale. Not one person asked how my company was doing. Not one asked about the nonprofit work. Not one acknowledged the sobriety chip I'd earned 3 years ago, the one I still keep tucked inside my purse like an anchor. To them, I wasn't Margaret, the woman who rebuilt her entire life piece by painstaking piece. I was still Maggie the screw-up, the one who made things difficult, the one who isolated herself, the one who missed Grandpa's funeral, never mind the panic attack that left me shaking on my apartment floor, unable to get on the plane. Never mind that not a single relative called afterward. It was easier to believe their version. It always was. I excused myself to the kitchen for a moment of quiet, and that's when I heard it, muffled voices, then one sharp whisper slicing through the air like broken glass. She's just trying to buy her way back into the family after what she did. Uncle Dennis, not even trying to lower his voice. What I did. 3 simple words, heavy as a verdict. I froze behind the doorway, breath caught in my throat. There was a second voice, another aunt murmuring agreement. They exchanged knowing glances, the kind you give when your favorite villain finally shows up in the story. I felt the plastic cup in my hand bend under the pressure of my grip. Buy my way back. 6 months ago, when Ethan was rushed to the hospital, I heard through a friend of a friend. No family member called me, not even a text. But I called the billing department. I sat on hold for hours. I wired the full amount quietly, anonymously. I wasn't trying to buy anything. I just didn't want Ethan drowning in debt on top of fear. And now here I was being painted as a manipulator with an agenda. A familiar ache spread through my chest, the kind that whispers, "See, they'll never let you change. They'll never let you outgrow the version they love to judge." I stepped outside to breathe, pretending to check my phone, even though no one had texted me in days. The patio was warm, decorated with sagging folding tables and pink lemonade bottles labeled, "It's a Girl in Glitter." I stared at them like they held answers. Why did they always make me the villain? Why was my progress invisible but my scars unforgettable? After a minute, Logan appeared behind me. Margaret, her tone was syrupy, weaponized politeness. I turned. Hey, that's Stroller. She sipped her mimosa. A bit much, don't you think? I blinked. Too much. Well, it's sweet you're trying. But it made everyone else's gifts look small. I wasn't trying to make anyone look bad, I said quietly. Sure, she said. But showing up with something expensive after disappearing for years, it kind of feels like you're compensating. I stared at her. Is that what everyone thinks? It's what people are saying. People, I repeated. Or Uncle Dennis. She shrugged. If you really want to make things right, it's going to take more than a fancy stroller. Make things right. The phrase that had been chained around my ankles since I was 17. I felt something inside me shift, not violently, but decisively. I didn't come here to make things right, I said. I came to support Ethan. Logan's smile tightened. Well, she said then you probably shouldn't have missed his gender reveal, or the announcement party, or the ultrasound brunch. I bit the inside of my cheek, hard. I could feel my heartbeat pounding against my ribs, feel years of swallowed bitterness rising like a tide. But I'd learned something in my 30s: truth rarely wins against the stories people enjoy believing. So I said nothing, and Logan walked away satisfied. I stayed outside longer than I needed to, cooling the anger beneath my skin, replaying that hospital bill in my mind, hearing Dennis's whisper over and over. And that's when it hit me. It didn't matter what I did. They had already written me out of their story. And if they insisted on casting me as the calculating outsider, fine. I'd show them exactly how calculating I could be. And I'd start with the receipt. When Ethan finally walked through the door, everything inside me softened just a little. He looked exhausted, but glowing in that new parent, terrified, excited way. And for a split second, seeing him reminded me of who we used to be before adulthood twisted every family bond into something brittle and suspicious. He didn't see me at first. Everyone swarmed him. Logan, Uncle Dennis, 3 aunts who loved hovering like bees around a fresh jar of honey. I waited quietly the way I always do, holding my breath, like my existence might disrupt the balance of the room. Then his eyes found mine. Mags. Nobody had called me that in years. And just like that, the memories hit 2 kids jumping off Grandma's porch with cardboard wings, swearing we could fly if we believed hard enough. He hugged me gently. I tried not to melt into it. "You came?" he asked. Of course I came. I wasn't sure if, after everything... I shrugged. Wouldn't miss it. His gaze drifted to the stroller behind me. Margaret. Damn, you didn't have to. I wanted to. You deserve something that makes life easier. His eyes softened, but before anything real could settle between us, Uncle Dennis swooped in like a hawk spotting prey. "Ethan, sweetheart, don't exhaust yourself standing around chatting," he said, guiding him away. "Let's get you seated. You're carrying precious responsibility now." He said it like I wasn't even human, like I was a bad smell someone was trying to air out. I forced a smile and stepped back, just saying hi. He didn't reply. He didn't even look at me. The gift opening, where their script finally cracked. It didn't take long before they started the gift opening ceremony. Every sparkly bag, every set of pastel onesies, every mismatched pack of diapers each drew exaggerated squeals from the family gallery. Then it was time for my gift. Ethan reached for the note I'd taped to the stroller. He unfolded it, brows lifting slightly as he read the simple line, "For you and your daughter. Hope this helps, M." The room leaned in. Every overly perfumed aunt, every cousin pretending not to stare. Uncle Dennis' arms folded like a judge, waiting for a guilty verdict. Ethan looked up at me. "Margaret, this is..." Before he could finish, Dennis let out a scoff loud enough to cut through the room. "Well," he muttered, "I guess money can buy guilt." Every single head snapped toward him. Every single head snapped toward me. Heat surged through my face. My throat tightened. "Excuse me," I said, standing without meaning to. "Oh, please," Dennis said. He wasn't even trying to lower his voice now. "You think you can disappear for years, 'cause all that drama, and then waltz back in with a stroller and a smile." "What drama?" My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. "What exactly did I do, Dennis?" The room fell silent. Even the babies in the corner stopped babbling, like the universe was giving me the floor for the first time in my life. Dennis lifted his chin, authority radiating off him like heat from asphalt. "You left. You didn't show up when this family needed you. You weren't there for Grandpa's funeral. You didn't call when Ethan went to the hospital." I took a slow breath. "You mean the hospital bill I paid?" The silence sharpened into something electric. Dennis blinked. "What?" I pulled out my phone. My hands didn't shake, not this time. I opened the PDF, turned the screen toward him. The big, bold numbers were impossible to miss. $12,436. Paid in full. Anonymous donor M. Brooks. Timestamp 6 months ago. The bill was going to collections, I said softly. Ethan had no insurance yet. Nobody called me. So I called the hospital myself. Ethan stared at the screen, stunned. How do you even know about that? He whispered. Because I cared enough to find out, I replied. Even when none of you cared about me. Dennis's face drained of color. That's ridiculous, he snapped. You're lying. I have the transaction ID, I said calmly. Call the hospital. Go ahead. Several relatives pulled out their phones as if fact-checking was a sport. Ethan stepped forward, voice cracking. You paid that? Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't about me, I said. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted you to be okay. His eyes glossed with something I hadn't seen since we were kids, pure, unfiltered gratitude. And pain. Maybe guilt, too. The moment their narrative collapsed, Dennis tried again, voice trembling with the last scraps of his authority. That doesn't change anything. She still abandoned this family. Something inside me snapped quietly like a thread pulled too tight for too long. "No, Dennis," I said. "You abandoned me." He froze. Everyone froze. When I was 17, I continued trying not to fall apart. You told my mother I was a lost cause. You're the reason I stopped coming to family events. You're the reason I was cut out of every group chat, every update, every invitation. I let my gaze sweep the room. All of you decided who I was and never bothered to ask if it was true. Logan looked pale. An ant wiped under her eye. Someone whispered, "My God." Ethan stepped toward me, voice trembling. "Mags, I didn't know." "I know you didn't." I swallowed. "That's why I never said anything. I didn't want you to feel guilty." For a heartbeat, I thought the room might shift, finally see me for the real woman I'd spent years becoming. But then Dennis muttered under his breath, bitter and almost too quiet to catch. "Well, it's not like she earned that money honestly anyway." That was it. The poisoned truth at the core of every whisper. The accusation that followed me like a ghost. I felt the world narrow to a pinpoint. I met his eyes, calm, cold, clear. And I made a decision. Not here, not now. But soon. They wanted spectacle. I'd give them one. And it would start with the one thing they'd never expect. A presentation. At the next family gathering. With every receipt they'd ever weaponized against me. I left the baby shower quietly walking past the stroller, still sitting there like a forgotten monument to their judgment. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said goodbye. But I didn't need them to. For the first time in years, I walked out with my spine straight, because the truth was finally on my side, and I was done letting them rewrite me. I didn't cry when I left the baby shower. I didn't scream or slam doors or punch the steering wheel, the way I used to when emotions blindsided me. I just drove home in complete silence, numb, detached, almost weightless, like the world had turned down its volume and left me floating somewhere outside myself. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from being misunderstood for so long that lies begin to feel heavier than truth. The family's whispers replayed in my mind, Dennis's voice slicing through the room, Logan's smug smile, the stares that branded me as the person I worked years to stop being. It all formed this low, persistent ache in my chest, the kind that whispers, maybe they're right about you, maybe you haven't changed, maybe you never will. By the time I reached the parking garage under my apartment building, the numbness had fully taken over. I sat in the driver's seat long after the engine quieted, staring past the windshield into the shadows. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't feel. All I managed to do was breathe small, shallow breaths that seemed to disappear before reaching anywhere that mattered. Inside, the apartment felt foreign, too quiet, too still, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. I kicked off my shoes, fell onto the couch with all my clothes still on, and stared at the ceiling until the patterns blurred. Hours passed without sound. I didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't touch my phone. For 3 days I disappeared. Emails piled up. Clients waited. My phone died and stayed dead. I missed my Thursday night recovery meeting, the first one I'd skipped in over a year. Food went cold on the coffee table. I drifted between the couch and the floor, wrapped in that strange emptiness I thought I'd outgrown. I wasn't spiraling toward old habits. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing anything reckless. It was something quieter, an emotional paralysis that made even sitting upright feel like climbing a mountain. On the third day, I forced myself into the shower. Hot water ran over my skin, steam filling the space like a soft reminder that I still existed. When I stepped out and wrapped myself in a towel, I felt just barely human again. That's when I plugged in my phone. It powered on slowly like it was waking from a coma. Notifications flooded the screen, missed calls, messages, calendar alerts. None of them mattered. What did matter was the one that made my breath catch in my throat. Venmo $12.46 received from Ethan Hartley. I stared so long I forgot to blink. My brain refused to process it. Ethan, my cousin, who hadn't even known I paid the bill until I told the entire baby shower, had just sent me the full amount back. I opened the app. There it was. No note, no explanation. Just the money. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. Ethan. I'm sorry. I should have had your back in that room. You didn't deserve any of it. I can't fix the past, but I can stop pretending their version of you is true. My throat tightened. For the first time in days, something warm pushed through the fog inside me. I pressed the phone to my chest and breathed an actual deep breath that didn't feel like swallowing glass. Me, you didn't have to pay me back. Ethan, I know. That's why I did. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something close, something I'd been starving for without realizing it acknowledgement. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring through the blinds. No alarm, no dread, just clarity. I got up, showered again, shaved, opened every window in the apartment, and let the stale air escape. Then I cleaned, really cleaned, scrubbed countertops, folded laundry, washed dishes, picked up the pieces of the last 3 days, and slowly began stitching myself back together. By noon, I felt grounded enough to put on real clothes. By afternoon, I walked to the coffee shop down the block. By the next hour, I was back at my office. My assistant Jade nearly dropped her stapler when she saw me. "Margaret, you're alive. I thought you fell off the planet." "I did," I said. "The planet was overrated." She laughed, a bright, unexpected sound that loosened something inside me. Work was exactly what I needed. I threw myself into it with a focus I hadn't felt in months. 12-hour days, endless design revisions, pitch decks, meetings, branding updates. Not to prove myself to Dennis or anyone else in that room where they crucified me so casually, but to remind myself of who I was. A few nights later, I returned to my recovery meeting. A guy named Mateo, 4 months sober, talked about radical acceptance and how he stopped chasing apologies from people who couldn't even acknowledge their own damage. That hit deep, deeper than I expected. I went home that night and opened an old photo on my phone. Me and Ethan kids in Grandma's backyard. Grass stains on our knees. Missing teeth. Grins too wide for our faces. We looked free. Close. Untouched by the bitterness that would come later. I didn't realize tears were falling until one splashed on the screen. The next evening, Ethan texted me again. Lunch, just us, no drama. I agreed. We met at a tiny Thai place, halfway between our apartments. He looked tired in a way fatherhood does to the people. Softened edges, worn down nerves, a glow somewhere beneath the exhaustion. Over noodles and mango, sticky rice walls finally lowered. "I didn't know any of it," he said quietly. "Your sobriety, your business, therapy, all of it. Dad never told me." "He didn't want you to know," I replied. "Because if you knew I changed, you'd have to question why they didn't." Ethan nodded. Eyes heavy. Dad builds narratives. He sticks to them so he never has to be wrong, even when the truth is right in front of him. We didn't need to say more. The silence between us wasn't strained this time. It was an understanding, raw, overdue grounding. Then Ethan reached into his bag and slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Hospital forms, prenatal insurance, birth plan, emergency contacts." I frowned. "Why are you giving me this?" He took a breath. "Because I want you to be my daughter's emergency contact." I froze, blindsided. "Ethan, you have family. You have a partner, a whole support system." "Barely," he whispered, "and I trust you more." Something inside me cracked open softly, quietly, like a window I didn't realize had been sealed shut. Walking home that night, the air felt different, lighter, like the world wasn't pressing down on me for once. I didn't need a family that only loved the broken version of me. I was building something new, something real. And if Dennis wanted to keep spreading lies about who I was, then it was time to show him exactly who I had become. With proof, with clarity, with receipts he would never recover from. There's a strange kind of peace that settles over you when you make a decision not out of anger or panic, but from that cold, steady clarity that comes after you've been pushed 1 inch too far. That's what filled me the morning the envelope arrived. It was thick, obnoxiously shiny, and over-the-top pale pink, with gold embossed edges. Even the stamp looked like it came from a royal wedding invitation. I thought maybe Ethan's girlfriend was having another baby event, some pre-birth celebration I'd forgotten existed. But when I opened it, I felt my lips twitch into something between a laugh and disbelief. A grandfather-to-be gala. Of course he would do this. Uncle Dennis had officially decided Ethan's pregnancy was about him, not the baby, not Ethan, not the mother. Him. He was throwing an entire gala to celebrate his own impending grandparenthood. And there it was written in cursive so dramatic it was almost illegible. Join us for an elegant evening, honoring Dennis Hartley as he prepares to welcome his first grandchild. Same venue where they once held Logan's engagement party. Same pretentious dress code. Plated dinner, champagne toast, no children, no unapproved plus ones. And at the bottom, like a warning, disguised as etiquette. This is a family event. Out of respect, please refrain from bringing outside guests or discussing sensitive matters. They might as well have printed my name under it. I sat at my kitchen table, turning the card over in my hands, letting the absurdity of it wash over me. After everything at the baby shower, Dennis had not only doubled down, he'd built a stage for his ego and handed out formal invitations. I should have thrown it away, should have rolled my eyes and deleted the date from my mind. Instead, I smiled. This was exactly what they'd never expect a family event with Dennis at center stage, the entire clan gathered. All eyes ready to hang on his every word. The perfect audience. The perfect moment. The perfect place to correct a decade of rewriting erasure and whispered poison. I picked up my phone and texted Ethan a photo of the card. "Me, see you seeing this?" He responded seconds later. "Ethan, I saw it. Gross, right?" Me beyond. "Do you think he'll give a speech?" "Ethan, he's been practicing one in the mirror for weeks." I stared at that message. A slow smile spread across my face. Me perfect. Then we'll give him a little intermission. Later that day, I called Nate. Nate had been one of the few constants through every version of my life college. The worst years, the rebuild, the company. He was chaotic brilliance wrapped in hoodies and sarcasm, the kind of friend who'd bring you soup when you were sick but forget the spoon. When I told him what happened at the baby shower, the silence on the other end of the phone wasn't shock, it was calculation. Then he said, "So we're doing a presentation at the gala about your evil uncle, right?" "Not about him," I said. "About me. About what really happened. About everything they've twisted. I'm done letting them define who I am." He let out a slow, delighted whistle. "I'm going to need a projector, a clicker, and at least 5 backup USBs. I laughed, not a nervous laugh, but the kind that comes from finally stepping into your own power. Done. Over the next 2 weeks, Nate and I built a presentation that could shatter a narrative. Not dramatic, not flashy, no animations or gimmicks. Just truth. Simple black slides, white text, dates, receipts, emails, financial statements, screenshots of anonymous payments. The Venmo transfer Ethan sent me. A timeline of everything they'd twisted or erased. Nate added a slide labeled, "The story they told you," followed by, "The reality they never wanted you to know." I gave him details I'd never planned on sharing, my lowest points. My panic attack on the day of Grandpa's funeral, the years of therapy, the business I built from scratch, without a cent of family help, the nonprofit donations, the sobriety milestones. He fact-checked everything, even dug up archived billing statements I'd forgotten existed. Ethan contributed too. He sent a screenshot of the $12,436 payment he returned with a note attached. "This is what she did before anyone else even knew I needed help." It was the first time in years I felt like someone was standing next to me instead of behind me. 2 days before the gala, I composed an email to Dennis. "Hi Dennis, just confirming I'll be attending your event this Saturday. Thank you for the invitation. I'll be bringing a short presentation on family legacy and truth. I think it'll really resonate. Looking forward to it. Margaret." There was no reply, but the read receipt was immediate. Good. Let him sweat. The night of the gala, I arrived early. The venue was absurdly extravagant marble floors, chandeliers dripping light over round tables covered in satin cloth. A string quartet played classical versions of pop songs, which somehow made the whole setting feel even more artificial. Dennis had his own grandfather's throne at the center wrapped in gold fabric. There were framed photos of him and Ethan scattered everywhere, none that included me, of course. Ethan approached me quietly, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. "You look like you're about to take over a Fortune 500 company." I smirked close. Nate arrived behind me, wearing an improvised staff lanyard he'd made that read, "AV Overlord." I shook my head. Professionalism at its finest. "I contain multitudes," he said. As the room filled, I recognized dozens of faces that once turned away from me. Relatives, family, friends, distant cousins who still believed Dennis's stories. They watched me with a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and the lingering judgment I knew too well. But this time something inside me didn't shrink. Dinner started. Toasts followed. Laughter rose like steam around the room. Then Dennis stood up. Glass clink. A smile so self-satisfied it bordered on theatrical. "Good evening, everyone." "No, not tonight." Before he could finish, Ethan rose from his seat. "Actually," he said, voice steady, "before Dad speaks, I'd like to say something." Dennis froze. His smile faltered. Ethan spoke briefly, thanking people for coming, acknowledging the support, offering a warm, gentle introduction that made Dennis visibly impatient. Then he looked at me, a small nod. It was my turn. I stood, walked calmly toward the podium. Nate dimmed the lights. The projector screen blinked to life, and in the silence that followed, every eye fell on me. The woman they ignored, dismissed, whispered about, until today. The room was silent in a way I'd never experienced before. Not the empty silence of awkward gatherings, not the hush after a toast. This was something else. A charged electric stillness, like every molecule in the room was bracing for impact. The first slide glowed on the screen. A photo of me and Ethan as kids. Muddy knees, missing teeth, wild grins. A reminder of a time before the family rewrote both our stories. Family isn't just blood, the caption read. It's who stands by you when everyone else walks away. I stepped to the mic. I wasn't always the best version of myself, I began. My voice echoed through the hall, calm, but unmistakably steady. I've made mistakes. I've disappeared at times I should have shown up. But one thing I haven't done ever is stop caring. Click. The next slide appeared, a scanned image of Ethan's hospital bill. Bold letters, $12,436. Paid in full. Gasps rippled through the room like a wave. This, I said, tapping the screen gently, was 6 months ago. Ethan was rushed to the hospital. Complications. No insurance. No coverage. And no one thought to call me, not even to tell me he was alive. Eyes shifted. People glanced at each other, at Dennis, at Ethan. I only heard through a third-hand friend who thought I must have already known. I didn't. Because I wasn't on the family group chat anymore. I paused. Because I'd been quietly erased. Murmurs spread through the guests. But I paid the bill. I continued, quietly. Not because I wanted credit or wanted a place at anyone's table. I did it because Ethan mattered to me. Still does. Click. A short audio clip played from the speakers. Dennis's voice. Clear, amplified. Cruel. She's just trying to buy her way back into the family after what she did. The room reacted instantly. Some gasped. Others stiffened. A few covered their mouths. Dennis's face turned a deep red, so fast it was almost alarming. He stood. That is taken out of context. No, I said, my voice cutting across the room like a blade. It's exactly the context you intended. I changed the slide. What they told you versus what actually happened. On the left, Margaret abandoned the family. She didn't show up for Grandpa's funeral. She's manipulative. She's unstable. She didn't earn her success. On the right, I had a panic attack the day of the funeral. No one called afterward. I've been sober for 3 years. I founded a successful UX firm without a cent of family help. I paid Ethan's bill before anyone else even knew he needed help. The split-screen truth was devastating. Not in a dramatic way. This wasn't fireworks or chaos. It was quiet devastation, the kind that forces people to question every story they'd lazily accepted. I let the silence grow heavy. You all decided who I was, I said. And you stuck to it even when it stopped being true. Even when I outgrew that version. Even when I worked harder than I've ever worked to rebuild my life. I turned toward Dennis. And you, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You've controlled the narrative for years. You made it easier for everyone to believe I was the problem than to admit you might have been wrong. You whispered your stories instead of asking questions. You spoke louder than I ever had the chance to. He tried to speak, but Ethan suddenly stood. Dad, he said firmly, sit down. Dennis froze. For the first time in his life, he didn't have the room. Ethan did. Then Ethan stepped forward, his voice breaking slightly as he addressed the crowd. I believed a lot of things about Margaret, he said, and every single one of them came from him. He gestured toward Dennis. I never asked for her side. I never checked. And that's on me. He took a breath, steadying himself. But the truth is simple. When I needed someone most, when I didn't even know I needed someone, Margaret was there. When nobody else even noticed. He turned to me, eyes soft. You've always shown up, even when we didn't. Something in my chest loosened painfully like a knot finally untying. I stepped back slightly as Ethan took the mic. I want everyone in this room to know, he said, that Margaret is my emergency contact. When my daughter is born, she'll be the first person I call. The applause didn't erupt all at once. It started quietly. One person, then another, then a cluster. But then it grew, became something real, something warm, something I never expected to feel again in this family acceptance. Some people even stood. Not everyone, of course not everyone, but enough. Logan avoided my eyes. Some aunts whispered to each other, expressions shifting, rewriting their internal scripts as fast as their minds would allow. A few uncles looked genuinely ashamed. And Dennis, he looked stunned, small, cornered by a truth he could not control. He tried once more to salvage his image, mumbling something about manipulation and theatrics, but the room wasn't his anymore. He left abruptly, almost stumbling as he pushed past chairs. No one followed him. Not even Logan. The rest of the night blurred apologies. Hesitant smiles, relatives approaching me with cautious sincerity. A few offered hugs. Some shook my hand. Others said they wished they'd known sooner. And Nate, still wearing his ridiculous AV Overlord badge, grinned at me like we'd just executed a flawless heist. When Ethan hugged me goodbye, he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I didn't have words for that, so I just squeezed his hand. I drove home feeling lighter. Not triumphant, not like I'd won anything. Just free. For the first time in years, free. I hadn't demolished my family. I hadn't humiliated anyone for sport. I had simply told the truth. And sometimes the truth is enough to burn down every lie built around it. The fallout happened faster than I expected, faster than Dennis could ever spin his way out of. Families don't stay quiet when the truth finally gets oxygen. It spreads, mutates, rearranges loyalties. And that night cracked the entire Hartley family script wide open. By the next morning, screenshots of the presentation were already circulating in every group chat I'd been excluded from for years. Older relatives were forwarding the audio clip of Dennis whispering about me. Cousins I barely remembered were asking each other, "Did we really believe all that?" Even people outside the family neighbors. Old friends. Church folks were messaging Ethan asking if it was all true. And Dennis, he tried to salvage himself the same way he always had with lies. He told people I manipulated the audio, said I doctored the receipts, claimed I ambushed him out of jealousy and spite. Spun a brand new narrative because when the truth threatens a man who has lived off illusions, he doesn't apologize. He doubles down. But this time nobody bought it. Not with the evidence. Not with Ethan's testimony. Not with the entire gala crowd watching him crumble in real time. For the first time in his life, Dennis's voice wasn't the loudest. It wasn't even relevant. People stopped responding to his messages, stopped visiting for Sunday brunch, stopped defending him out of habit. The shift was small at first, then decisive. His empire of whispers fell apart not with a bang, but with a quiet collective exhale from everyone who'd been manipulated by him for years. 2 weeks later, he sent Ethan the most bitter text I'd ever seen. "Maybe one day your daughter will betray you the way she betrayed me. Then you'll understand." Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he sent him a single photo. A newborn baby girl, resting in my arms. No caption, just truth. And truth was the one thing Dennis never knew how to fight. The day Ethan's daughter was born, hope named for something he said he wanted to reclaim. I was at the hospital from the moment my phone lit up at 4:17 a.m. I drove half asleep, still pulling on a jacket in the car heart, pounding in that shaky mix of fear and joy that only comes when you realize someone trusts you with the most vulnerable moment of their life. When the nurse finally led me into the room, Hope was tiny and pink-cheeked, wrapped like a fragile secret. Ethan placed her gently into my arms as if handing me something sacred. "She's here," he said, voice cracking. I held her the way I had once imagined holding a future I wasn't sure I'd ever deserve, carefully with awe and with more love than I could explain. She blinked up at me with wide, curious eyes, and in that moment something in my chest unlocked. A door I didn't know was there opened, and it felt like family. Not the family I grew up with, not the one that defined me by my worst years, not the one that tried to turn my mistakes into a permanent character flaw. A new one, chosen, earned, real. Ethan watched me with an expression I hadn't seen since we were kids, pure trust. "I wanted you to be the first person she met outside of us," he said softly. "After everything, you deserve that." I swallowed hard, unable to speak. Sometimes healing doesn't feel like a breakthrough or a triumph. Sometimes it feels like a quiet room, a newborn heartbeat, and the realization that you are no longer living inside the version of yourself your family constructed. You stepped out, you rebuilt, and now you're here. In the weeks that followed, my life shifted into something steady and bright. I visited Ethan and Hope constantly, held her while he showered or napped, helped set up her nursery, stayed up during the hard nights, whispered to her when she cried, telling her stories about bravery, resilience, and the importance of never letting anyone define who you are. At work, I felt sharper, more confident. In recovery meetings, I spoke more openly. At home, the quiet felt comforting instead of suffocating. People in the family started reaching out, some to apologize, some to understand, some to simply say, "I didn't know." I accepted what I could, released what I couldn't, and didn't chase the rest. I no longer needed universal approval, just truth, just peace, just the right people in my corner. One evening, as I rocked Hope to sleep in Ethan's dimly lit living room, I realized something. I got my name back. Not the name Margaret, the one printed on my driver's license. The other one. The one Dennis tried to strip from me. The one woven from resilience, growth, and survival. My real name, my earned name. The name that says, I'm not the screw-up you made me out to be. I'm not the broken girl you told stories about. I'm not the version of me you clung to because it made you feel righteous. I am who I became, who I work to become, who I choose to be every day. And I will never let anyone, family, or otherwise rewrite me again.